Alors avant de commencer cet épisode, on voulait quand même remercier Madabel, qui est un des fidèles partenaires de Biohockey. Madabel, c'est une académie qui vient en aide aux dirigeants, aux cadres supérieurs d'entreprise pour augmenter leur niveau de leadership humaniste et serviteur. Donc si vous perdez par exemple vos meilleurs candidats, si vous voyez qu'il y a des tensions dans vos équipes, si vous sentez aussi que vos employés ne sont pas forcément assez impliqués par rapport à ce que vous leur demandez, peut-être que vous avez besoin de l'aide d'un coach professionnel et là Madabel peut vous aider. Donc si ça vous intéresse, rendez-vous sur le www.madabel.com, et voilà, on aura peut-être de quoi vous aider. Nous, en attendant, on se retrouve pour un nouvel épisode de ce podcast de Biohockey. Ce sera avec Shane McLeod.
I'd met my wife through hockey. She was a hockey player. My kids play hockey, and he had the gold medal around his thing. And I asked if I could feel it. He put it in my hand. And I said, wow, it's so heavy. And after the semi-final against Holland that we won, I walked in there and my phone just went ding, 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 ding.
Welcome to another Biohockey podcast. We are very glad to be here again on the Center of Excellence of Belgian Hockey with an exceptional guest. Today's guest, it's Shane McLeod. Welcome, Shane.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very good. Looking forward to this.
Yeah. So Shane, you're quite a special coach for Belgian international players. You're one of the most influential coaches in the modern hockey era. We can say that. You like that? You helped transform Belgium into Olympic and world champions. So first of all, thank you for your service. We'll start with some quick questions. For people who don't know you yet.
Sure.
So first question, your full name and your current role, please.
Yeah, so my name is Shane McLeod. I am currently the head coach of the Belgian Red Lions, and we're working towards a couple of big events, the first one being the World Cup here in Belgium in August. Yeah, at home.
Quite an exciting time for a Red Lions. What is the biggest achievement of your career? I have an idea.
Yeah, look, the Tokyo Olympics, it has to be the pinnacle for results-wise. You know, it was a combination of having a generation that had worked for a number of years and under a number of coaches that managed to achieve something that was never done before. So being the pioneers and doing it for the first time is always something special.
We won the gold medal for some people. How would you describe yourself in 5 seconds to someone who doesn't know you?
Whoa. Yeah, look, I think I'm kind, I think I'm considerate, I think I'm ambitious, I think I have a high degree of empathy with players because I understand the journey that they go on. And I would like to think that I have the ability to treat people fairly, not always equally, but treating them fairly.
And it's important for you to have empathy in the high sport level?
Yeah, it's a really unnatural environment. And so, you know, some of the things that we ask from our athletes are not easy. And even if you are incredibly diligent, sometimes you don't make it, you know, and there's a lot of things that are out of your control as an athlete, and I feel for that. I would love to say that if you only put in the hard work that you're going to get there, but there's a lot of other factors that contribute. So empathy comes in handy there.
It's one of them. Outside of work, what do you love to do?
Yeah, it sounds a bit cliche, but my family is really important, like most people. Yeah, certainly my own family.
So you all live in Belgium now?
We all live in Belgium. Yeah. So I have 3 children that are growing up quicker than I would like, and it's really fun to be with them and give a life balance. You know, so that's not about performance; it's about participation. That one.
What I'm most proud in my journey is.
Look, what I'm most proud of is probably having the ability to stand in front of quite impressive and quite amazing people, and have them feel that I'm working with them and helping them get better. That's a pretty nice. It's a nice feeling to have, that you have that ability to work with such driven people, and there's a mutual respect there from player to coach and coach to player. So yeah, that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of.
That's a good point. So you won a lot of things with Belgium. Olympic gold medal in 2021 for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, delayed due to the COVID circumstances. You won the World Cup with Belgium in 2018, the European Championship at home. The big treble, it was a massive moment for Belgian players. How did you feel it?
Yeah, it was something special. And when you're going on that journey, it's not until you look back that you realize how amazing that particular journey was, you know. So, yeah, great memories. But amongst those great memories were also other little milestones, you know, with players and having a generation come of age was really something that was quite special.
And how long did it take for you to realize what you've really done with this generation?
I was lucky to have a sabbatical period after the Tokyo Olympics, and that was very reflective. And it kind of put everything in order, and it showed me a couple of things. One is what an amazing thing that was achieved by this collective. But secondly, that I just love what I do for a job, and incredibly lucky to be able to do it. And that's kind of what's extended my coaching and brought me back into the current day of being back in that head coach role.
You needed this time off to, you know, just realize and take care of yourself?
Needed is a big word for it. I had the luxury of being able to do that, and not everyone has that in life, to take a step back, take a breath and reflect. And so I'm super grateful that my life circumstances allowed that to happen. But I think it's important for everyone to do many versions of that, you know, just put your house in order and think about why you do things, and rather than doing it out of habit, you want to do it out of passion and desire. And that was the thing that came to the forefront, that look, I'm doing this not just because it's what I do, it's something that I love doing.
Of course. We will go back to the very beginning now. How did hockey enter in your life?
Yeah, so that's really gone a long way back.
In New Zealand then?
Yeah, it was in New Zealand. So you're always lucky to have a few people in your life that make a real mark, and my auntie was one of those people. So she used to take me along to hockey all the time, and she was the manager of the New Zealand women's team for 14 years or something. And so every Saturday and Sunday I would be tracking behind her.
Family meetings had to be fun.
Yeah. Well, it was just I'm not sure if I loved hockey because I loved her, or if I loved her because I loved hockey. You know, it was inseparable, the combination. But it drove my love for the game, and also because I watched it so much, I think it helped with that game understanding. And we used to always talk hockey and stuff.
And how old were you when you started to play?
Yeah, so I because I followed her around, I was actually playing hockey for a long time before I was playing in official games. So you can imagine always sticking ball all the time. But my first actual game was when I was 11, which in today's sort of Belgian club culture, that's quite old. But because I played all the time, I was further ahead than most other kids that were starting. And so it was kind of my thing. It gave me a bit of confidence in myself and what I was doing, and so it became something that I grabbed hold of, and it made me want to play more and more and more.
On a personal level, what did this sport give you?
Well, it's given me everything, you know. If I would hate to make a list of the things that have, you know, I met my wife through hockey. She was a hockey player. My way of earning an income is through hockey. My kids play hockey. My support network in my community is hockey. So, yeah, I'm glad you don't have to pay a certain amount of money for the things that bring you the most, because I'd be a broke man. Hockey's been very good to me.
Yeah. And do you still play from time to time with your children or something?
Oh, certainly with the kids. But it's a funny thing when your job becomes, or your passion becomes your job. You kind of search other areas for that type of passion. And when I stopped playing competitively, I really, from one day to the next, completely stopped. And I think part of it was because I have to ask people to do things that I would expect myself to do, and at some point in time you can't train like you need to train, and I'd be incredibly frustrated if I judge myself on my hockey skills when I'm 40 or 50.
And when did you know that you wanted to become a coach?
That kind of progressed relatively early. Like I've always wanted to work with people, so I taught for a little while. So my first occupation was teaching, and I kind of did a study of education and psychology as a combination, and because of that, the working with people was an attraction. And I always found when I was a player that I was heavily involved with the coach and working with the coach, and I always wanted the training sessions to go well, and so I would often take on a little part even when I was playing, just to give a hand and talk about our tactics and so on, and so it's always kind of been in me, and it's just been the next step, and it's kind of brought me to where I am now.
Okay. New Zealand is quite far from Belgium.
That's true. That is true.
How did you end up coaching our national team?
Yeah, so I don't know how long this podcast is, but it's
we have the time.
There's a short version and a long version. So the shortish version was I was coming over to Europe to actually work in France. So I got offered a contract in France to do coaching. I was 29, and I thought I'd finished my playing career.
Already on national team, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was finished with that. I thought, look, I'm keen to do an overseas experience. I ended up being in London, and when I was in London, the job in France fell through, so I was a little bit stuck. And I received this phone call, and it was really out of the blue. It was from a Belgian person that I don't know even how they had my contact or anything like that. And they asked me to come over and interview for two roles. One was the youth at Louvain Hockey School, and the second was as a head coach of the first team of Heracles men. They'd had Jean-Claude Moreau for 15 years or something, and he was stepping aside. And so I started like that, and very quickly I felt very comfortable in Belgium. It was at a stage that is very different from today. It was very amateurish, and there was opportunity there. And so when I was coaching the team, we had players that were away at skiing or doing something like that, and so they were short, and so the president said, well, could you fill in and play? So I played, and so for 4 or 5 years I was the player coach of Heracles, and at the same time working with some of the youth of Louvain. What was quite nice about the story was that many of those children that I worked with at Louvain, I then picked up again in the national team. Gautier Bocard is a good example. So I coached him when he was under 12, and then I coached him to an Olympic gold medal.
You saw them growth.
I saw them change from cheeky little boys to cheeky adults. So it was a super nice time, and it kind of all of the pieces came together really well.
And when you arrived in Belgium, were you surprised by the life in our country, or is it basically the same than in New Zealand?
Look, it's different enough to keep exciting and something new, but it's similar enough that you can survive and so on. What I was immediately impressed with was their ability to speak to me in the language that I was most comfortable with. It didn't help my Flemish and didn't help my French. I think I helped a lot of people learn English that I coached. But just I think that's quite symbolic of quite a welcoming nation, and going into a hockey community also, you know, like immediately you're surrounded by people that want to look after you and want to make life easy for you, and I found that incredibly nice, and you know, that's why that's why I live here now, and it's why I think my family and that thrive in this type of community.
And did you try to learn French or Flemish, or you
Yes.
stayed in English?
Yes,
Yeah, you tried?
No, I've tried. Another connection. When I was learning French, the grandmother of one of the players now, Frubergs, she used to give me private lessons for French, with a couple of other hockey players. I struggle with it, you know. It's lucky.
It's not an easy language.
No. And my wife is Flemish, and she sent me on courses, and my understanding's okay, but I do struggle.
You can understand, but you don't speak really well, right?
No.
You know, so when your players come here, you just always speak English, I suppose.
Yeah, English has kind of been the hockey language. You know, they get it. They get it in the Big Gold program and so on. And it has been quite remarkable. So now I think both the French and Flemish are fluent in certainly in the English, and almost in 3 languages they operate pretty well. So that's quite different than when I first arrived.
When you arrived, we'll talk about it, the Belgian team was talented, but not yet champions. What was your first observation when you arrived?
Yeah, I think you described it really well. Incredibly talented. You know, like if you had a look at them individually, they would play in any team in the world, and they would be the marquee players. And you know, when I was lucky enough to get asked to take over the role, what they also had is they had quite a few coaches before me that had kind of left them little parts of things that later become their superpowers a bit. So what I saw was a team that had the talent, but had yet to put it together as a collective, you know, and so we spent a lot of time working on that, you know. There's a saying that we used to use quite a lot. We wanted to be a star team, not a team of stars, and that is kind of how we operated for a while. And one of the compliments that happened after the first 10 months was that there was a newspaper article saying that Belgium's star player was the team, you know, and that was a really nice way to reflect on how we're operating. Yeah, it is fantastic, and it's not easy to achieve, but I think we did a good job in achieving that.
What was your honest first thought when you saw these players? Did you know that you were going to be able to win so many trophies?
So many, maybe not so many, but very quickly it became very apparent that that this team was special, you know, very special. Yeah, look, my first 2 or 3 games we lost, and it wasn't until we started to invest more and players took a lot more ownership and so on that we started to get that history of winning, you know. And at the same time, there were a couple of things in place. So we were kind of the expectation of the team was low, but the ability of the team was high. And so we had the luxury that we could under-promise and over-deliver, you know, and that kind of...
no pressure, but desire to do good.
Yeah, and people like that story. It's really a Cinderella story, and it doesn't happen very often in any sport. You see a team or a franchise coming from 15th in the world to being gold medalists and achieving that triple that you spoke about. People love that, you know, even outsiders that are not part of Belgium, they love that story, you know, and those players were lucky enough to be living that story, and they did it really well.
And how did they react when they realized what they've done? Did you have some very good conversations with your players after that? Well, after the gold medal, for example, in Tokyo?
Yeah. Look, you're constantly having conversations with your players, and you know, there's kind of this inner bubble. So that's where no one really gets to peek in, or if you do, it's just little glimpses. But that was an incredibly close team, you know, and how they celebrated and how they went upon that journey and the conversations and things are very special, you know, and you treasure them. Well, I'll treasure the conversations I've had for all my life to come. And there is a bond, you know, like if I see John Doman, or if I see Cedric Charlier, or if I see Felix Denayer, we know we've been in that journey together. Now, we don't see each other every day and so on.
But they became a group of friends, basically.
Very much so, very much so. Very much a group of friends, but that doesn't mean that they never challenged each other. You know, they certainly made each other better, and that's not always just through friendship. You know, they demanded a lot of each other, which is it's part of the skill.
Everyone was working for the others.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a team definition, finally. But so you won the gold medal in 2021 at the Olympic Games. How did you feel? What was your best memory about this tournament?
My best memory, well, it happens so quickly. Like when you're involved, you just it's a high pressure environment, and you try and get your team going the best you can. But probably my best memory from it was sitting in the changing room with a warm beer, and I never drink with the players, but I was stopping. But this warm Japanese beer, and I was sitting next to Arthur Van Doren, and he had the gold medal around his thing, and I asked if I could feel it, and he said sure, and he took it off and he put it in my hand, and I said, wow, it's so heavy, because it's such a heavy thing, it surprises you. And he had this very nice line. He said, yeah, it has to be heavy. It carries everyone's dreams, you know. And
beautiful.
It's unbelievable. It's incredibly well said.
Good improvisation.
I know. He's gifted, that guy. But I thought that captured everything, you know, like it's...
So as a coach, didn't you get a gold medal?
No, not we don't get one of the originals. It's for athletes. So there's a purity about winning a gold medal. But our federation, they also made some gold medals for the coaching staff and our direct support staff. So that was a really nice gesture. But there is a difference, and I do like the purity that it's just for athletes.
And then you lived something really special in Brussels, with the supporters meeting and celebration. How did it feel? How did it happen? Because John said to us that he didn't know that so many people were there, and that you didn't hear anything until you go to the balcony. Yeah. Is that true? And how do you remember about it?
Yeah, it's very true. You know, like hockey's hockey. It's not football. You know, and so when we were coming back, there was this talk about going to the Grand Place and so on, and I think everyone was a little bit worried that maybe the appearance and their girlfriend, and maybe there's 200
people,
200 people at maximum there, and so there was this worry that it was going to be underwhelming, and then when we were meeting and walked out, there was just
absolutely full.
It was packed, and such an incredible feeling. It was it was just represented that quite a few people were watching, you know, and that for a sport like hockey to be able to do that.
And did you feel surprised in your players' reaction when they saw so many people celebrate with them for such a big tournament?
For sure, but we saw surprise all the way. You know, like we had a kind of a parade to bring us there, and it was one of the funniest moments because it was raining. And an open air parade, and very typical. And it was just nice moment after nice moment. But again, because we're in a bubble, you don't have a true sense of what's going on in the outer world. You know, we tried to tell them, look, you know, the ratings in the TV was equivalent for the Olympic final was equivalent of Champions League final, and they all watch Champions League, and so you know, so it's that type of effect.
Right after the final whistle of the Olympic final.
Yeah.
What was the atmosphere in the dressing room?
Yeah, it was.
It was like a giant party, or?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was a real celebration because it was quite dramatic. You know, we were one up, and then there was a draw, and then we had a shootout win, and then we had to do another shootout, and so it takes you on this roller coaster ride of emotions, and more so than any other game, the importance of it. And what was strange in Tokyo was there was no crowd. You know, and so we there was a purity about the game because you could actually hear coaching, and you could
had
hear
no fans' reaction.
No,
of
no.
course.
So again,
I totally forgot that.
Yeah. So it was a weird. It was very much a bringing together of this is us, you know. And we tried to do a bit of visualization of, you know, when you come into the stadium, bring your family with them, you know, and that was something that we tried to trigger them to turn it into a home.
Did you celebrate with other Belgian athletes to the Olympic Village, or was it not possible due to the COVID rules?
Yeah, due to the COVID, it was not possible. We were kind of in our own little bubble. The guys celebrated. I think that night.
Did they do something really special, or?
Oh, really special? Look, I think they didn't want the night to finish, you know, and so I don't think it did finish.
Yeah, in the Grand Place.
Yeah, that's true. That's
quite
true.
long.
Yeah, but they celebrated together. So there was this kind of other athletes are competing and things like that. So you can't celebrate in the rooms or things like that. And there was kind of this park that was behind the rings of Tokyo, and there were a couple other teams that had finished and things like that. But we very much stayed together, and the guys enjoy each other's company. You know, they had a really nice time together, and and then we came back to Belgium.
And then you celebrated
and
with
celebrated
the fans. So first of all, congratulations, honestly, for that, because it was a truly brilliant adventure. As a fan, I saw this final. I almost had a heart attack many times, but yeah, finally we won it. And was it a different feeling than winning the World Cup? Was it bigger?
It's bigger. Yeah, it was bigger. Like we have with the Olympics, you feel as if more people are watching and connected with it because, you know, the Olympic Games. What happens is there's a lot of sports going on, and there's kind of a background story of the hockey, and so, you know, day one we can win a gold medal in cycling, for example, and then day three there's another medal, but we start to get momentum, and I think we pick up a few people that are interested in sport in general, and by the time we're playing the final, you know, most of the other sports have finished because it's how it is. So I quite like that little background story that happens.
And during a tournament like that, you said you were in a bubble, etc. But did the players and you have contact with your families at home, or etc., or you just try to stay with your group and don't communicate too much?
Look, we learned some lessons from some other events, you know, so it's probably the lesson we learnt in Rio was that too much contact with the outside world can be draining. You know, there's kind of this tipping point, and you know, in Rio,
it can disturb the group.
Yeah, it can. So in Rio, you know, I sometimes talk about there was no Wi-Fi in the village except for when you get in your apartment. And after the semi-final against Holland that we won, I walked in there and my phone just went ding, 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 ding for close on a minute, and with just messages of support and things like that. But what followed that was the next 2 or 3 days before the final, every time I went into a room, the guys were on a screen or trying to respond back to messages and things like that, trying to be really diligent, but it was sapping. It sapped a lot of their energy, and then we lost that final. In contrast, when we were playing the World Cup in 2018, we won the semi-final 6-0 against England. There were a couple of high fives, but the guys just they didn't spend any time. You know, they business end of the tournament, we want to stay off our phones, we want to just focus on what we're doing. And so that helped us. You know, we felt more comfortable going into the Tokyo final than any other final we had gone into.
So you felt it disturbed the group in Rio, basically?
Yeah. Look, a few things were in play. Like we felt as a coaching staff we had taken our team further than we had planned a little bit. So our brief was to have the players win the quarter final, because they'd never done that before, and if you win that, then you had the chance of playing either a semi-final or playing for third and fourth. So 2 chances at a medal, and so we felt we did pretty good job getting them to that point, but we fell short of preparing them for what a final is, you know, and we were probably the most informed team going into that final. But it was the first time we lost gold, you know, and so the guys didn't want that to happen again.
Yeah, understandably. So now I'd like you to speak directly to the young players listening to this podcast, the 13, 14, 15 years old players that are still learning about hockey. With the first question, when you see a young player, what's the first thing you look at? What do you look first when you evaluate a young player?
Probably their coachability. You know, like I think especially in the age group teams, you see a lot of talent. You know, and talent only gets you so far. You know, the real gift is, do you have the ability to train hard and to make hockey your life? You know?
How do you see that in a young player? How do you know that, okay, this guy is ready to go one step?
Yeah,
one more step.
You have to communicate with their support network. So you do need to get feedback from their coaches. You know, do they listen? Do they take on instructions? Do they do those little things extra to make themselves better? How do they play with other players? You know, like internationally, you have to be incredibly gifted to make it as an individual. You know, if you can make other players play better, already you're of great value. So
you want to feel the desire to progress?
Yeah, for sure. And it's almost an obsession, you know. It's a big word, but it does become like that, you know. Any moment or opportunity you can to play hockey, you go down, stick and ball, that you take those chances. And in the end, it's actually not a coach that ever gets you there. It's that drive that you have within you to try and make you the best you can be.
Okay. If a young player wants to improve fast or as fast as he can, what should they focus on first?
We talk about the basics a lot, you know, so so the ability to receive a ball well, the ability to pass a ball well, low error rate, you know, and then being able to do things in movement, that's really important. And then the element of speed, you know, the game is getting faster and faster, and athletes need to be able to physically and technically be able to play the game at a faster level that's ever been played before. So those are the attributes, you know. Just being a good hockey player is not always enough. You need to be fit, and you need to all those things around being fit. Eat well, have a good lifestyle, be diligent in your studies as well. Like that's something that sometimes gets overlooked, because hockey is a smart game as well. You need to have the ability to learn and then put into action what you learn. So we want well-rounded people.
Did you already see a young player and you had like this, wow, this guy is going to be insane?
I saw Gauthier Bocart at a young age and thought, wow, this guy's got a immense amount of ability. Yeah. Oh, look, you do, but are you always right? No. You know, like there's a massive question mark. Like I see more players now in Belgium. So my son plays in a U11 type of grade and things like that. I see more talent now in that age category and in and around those type of age categories than I've ever seen in Belgium before.
Okay.
But I still don't know if they will all get there. You know, it takes something special and a dedication and commitment.
A lot of work.
A lot of work, you know, but also a lot of enjoyment in doing that work. So, yeah, I think the state of Belgium hockey is very strong, and I think that there are a lot of players that could put their hand up to.
Do young players have to enjoy hockey first, or do they have to have a work ethic first?
I think they're linked. You know, like if you think about the work that you do well, it's work that you enjoy doing. You know, and if they don't have a joy of playing hockey and all the things surrounding that, they will struggle. There'll come a point in time where they say, no, I'm not getting out of this what I'm putting in. But if they love it and are passionate about it, what happens is there's no ceiling, there's no stopping point. They can just keep going. That's the athlete that we're after.
Okay. What should they do outside of training to become better players, of course?
Yeah. Again, they need to build up knowledge of nutrition. So they need to be eating well. They need to start understanding the game well on a collective and as an overview, as well as little pieces of the game. They need to be fit. So, as I said, the game has become a power endurance type of game. So they need to have that element of speed, and they need to be able to cope with increasing amount of load, you know, and it's a different at U14 than U16 and U18 and U21. But they need to make sure that they finish off games well, you know, and not just start a game well and then disappear.
That's just a small question, but how do you know, for example, if a young player eats well? Do you ask his parents? Do you ask his coaches? How do you know that? Because you can live with them. So,
yeah, well, you have to give the guidance. So that's one of the important areas, and that's what the support network and coaching staff need to supply. You know, like we're not policemen. We don't stand at a table and look what they eat and so on. But we need to kind of empower them to make good choices and an understanding of what foods is going to be good for their recovery, what's going to be good for their building up of muscle, all those type of things. That's our role to try and to give some guidance in that area. Their job is to take their guidance and put it into their day-to-day life.
What technical foundation is non-negotiable in hockey?
Well, again, the basics. You need to be able to stop a ball. You need to be able to move a ball to another player, and you need to be able to do everything in movement. You know, if there was one singular thing, it's in movement. You know, you should never be static in the modern game.
Okay, we had a good conversation with a sport psychologist. He said to us that some young players wants to train too long or too often. Do you think that young players needs to train like 3, 4, 5 hours a day, or just to enjoy and do something else out of the sport?
Yeah, look, I think free play is really important with hockey. So I think the ability to play unorganized games and self-managed games. So some of the best learnings that I see when I go to a hockey club is actually not the game itself. I see the kids in a small square of AstroTurf, no rules, or no umpires,
just enjoying
rules. They're just enjoying it. They're doing the latest skill of Tom Boone. They're playing little games, and often you see 2 games happening on the same field, and it seems to operate really well. That's where a lot of that learning happens, and sometimes we overcoach by just being setting things up a little bit too structured. That has its place for sure, but I think especially young kids developing need to have that, so it becomes fun.
And how important is it to have a good sleep when you are a player?
It's one of the top requirements. So sleep is probably first, and then the second is nutrition. It's when your body recovers. It's when your body builds. It's if an athlete is going to get injured in our program, the first thing we look at is how are they sleeping, to the point that if someone has a poor night's sleep, we will take them out of the training session because the risk of injury is too high.
In one sentence, what makes a future international player?
one sentence, it would be a combination of natural talent mixed with ability to train and desire to get better. That would probably, if you are one of those type of athletes, then you have a chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite an interesting one. No reflection. It came right from the heart. Really great. Last question. Some young players wants to be leaders. It's always a tricky concept. Can you teach leadership on a young player?
Yeah, I think so. I think not only can you, I think you should. I think you should take every responsibility that you, or possibility can, to give responsibility to young players. You know, it's incredible what they can actually do when put in a situation where they need to do that and are expected to do that. You know, I think gone are the days of coaches just telling, this is how it's done. You know, that's quite 20 or 30 years ago, and you don't see those type of coaches surviving anymore. And I think with the generations that are coming through, there's a couple of things that is evident. They are incredibly talented, and therefore we need to give them opportunities to build that aspect of their characters.
Thank you very much for your time, Shane, for your advices, for what you've done for Belgian hockey, of course. Hope you're still enjoying as much as you did previously. Thank you very much for your time. Best of luck for the World Championships.
Yeah, thank you.
Finger crossed.
Yeah, and feet and arms
and feet, everything we can.
Everything crossed. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and have a good time with the Red Lions
Thank you.
in Belgium.
Thank you, I appreciate it.